Hey guys, welcome back to another video on my channel. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe, like my videos, put all your comments and suggestions in the section below, and please check out all my other content once you're done watching this video. And as we can see from the screen, FiveThirtyEight has actually released a cool new feature that we're going to use in this video. It is going to be exploring the ways that Trump or Harris could win the 2024 election, and it's based off of like a what-if tool to pick a winner in each state and see how that changes FiveThirtyEight's 2024 presidential forecast. Now, obviously, FiveThirtyEight is already known for being skewed to the left, and we checked out their model one time before, and it's obviously always them skewed. 2016 it was, 2020 it was, but this is a fairly cool tool that we're going to end up using and filling out this map, and also going to put it on our map and compare it to the polls that we do have to be able to fill out those chances. Now, all these are pretty much the consensus ratings for FiveThirtyEight without me really putting a what if on any state. So these are the ratings right here. We have all these solid, lean, likely Democratic states. For some reason, Wisconsin and Michigan are lean Dem when the polls have it at a less than 1 point race for Harris, but you know, that's besides the point. And then we have some other toss-ups. We have Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, of course. And so we're going to fill out some of these states and see how that changes. And first, I want to fill out states that we know for certain that each candidate is going to win by a 12-point margin or over. So I'm going to put all of these states that we know Harris is going to win by 12 points in her safe column. So this won't change the map too much, but it's important to do that over here. And we're going to have New York. And I'm going to skip New Jersey because New Jersey right now I do not think is going to be in that safe margin. And then as you can see, this does not change the map much at all because all of Trump's states are still projected to go by similar amounts. If we fill in Trump's states over here, as you can see here, I filled in Alaska for safe for Donald Trump, and I actually moved some of these states from likely to safe, such as Missouri. Filling out all the rest of these states over here, it's going to end up moving a lot of these states before into that toss-up column. So this is why their map is obviously a little bit flawed, because just putting the states that we know are going to be safe for Trump in that safe column, we have the states of Wisconsin and Michigan falling now into that toss-up column, which is fairly interesting to say the least. But having all the safe states for both candidates in, we're going to see the chances are pretty even. 54% chance Harris wins and 46% chance Trump wins. So let's explore some other scenarios. Let's say that Iowa and Ohio then come in for Donald Trump. What does that do exactly? It puts Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina in that lean margin for Donald Trump already without even that. Obviously, Harris is going to be winning New Mexico, Colorado, New Jersey, all in that likely column as well. Donald Trump's going to be winning Maine second. So putting all those likely states in for both candidates, we're going to come out to this map again that we're very used to seeing, in the map that I've been saying a lot. It's that Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina are leaning Republican. Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania are out in that complete toss-up column. Meanwhile, we still have Minnesota, Virginia, New Hampshire, and Maine still staying in that likely column. Going back to our scenarios here, we see 50-50 chance of each candidate winning election. So let's go forward now. We know that Donald Trump's going to win the state of Texas, and we know he's going to win the state of Florida. So what does that do exactly? Once Donald Trump wins Texas and Florida, which he will, and the polls are saying he will by at least 5 points, then Pennsylvania goes into his column by a tilt amount, or a lean amount. And that's fairly interesting. And then that raises Trump's chances to 65%. But then on the other side, we have Maine second going to her, and that brings it down quite a little bit. We have New Hampshire that I do expect her to win, and Maine at large. Putting all those states into those columns, we have it once again at a 53 to 46% chance of Donald Trump winning. And then we're going to add the states of Virginia and Minnesota into her column. And if that happens, once again, she's favored by 54 to 45, and we're left with this kind of map. In these 7 swing states, they project Nevada as being a complete toss-up. Same with North Carolina. Same with Pennsylvania. They have Georgia and Arizona leaning to Trump. And then they have Wisconsin and Michigan leaning to Harris. And I do believe that Trump is going to win North Carolina right now. And if Trump wins the state of North Carolina, that basically puts him at a 65% chance to win the election, which is not that much. But if he ends up winning the state of Georgia, which I also do project, and the polls do have him leading in Georgia by a pretty solid amount, if I could put it in his column, there we go. if Georgia does go in his column, then right now he does end up having if we let it load around here. For some reason, this won't load, but it does show us the correct probabilities. If Trump ends up winning North Carolina and Georgia, he will have a 71% chance of winning the election, which is why he needs to secure North Carolina and Georgia. If Harris ends up flipping the state of Georgia and it goes into her column, then it'll end up being a lot closer if we get Georgia into her column right here and let it load. Then she's going to have an 86% chance of winning the election. So it's very, very fascinating that you see if the state of Georgia goes to Harris, it'll be very, very important. And she will have a much higher chance of winning the election. But as I project Donald Trump winning Georgia, we'll end up putting all these states into his column. I also do project that Trump will win the state of Arizona. If Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina are all placed into Trump's column, Trump will end up having a 92% chance to win the election. And what if Trump loses the state of Arizona? If Trump ends up losing the state of Arizona and Kamala Harris ends up winning it, then the map will shift once again and she will be favored to win the election, given that the state of Georgia and North Carolina are not called. If she ends up winning Arizona, she will have an 88% chance of winning the election. So it's very, very interesting going off of that. And then lastly, to the Rust Belt states, if Donald Trump wins the state of Pennsylvania, then he will have a 80% chance of winning the election. If Kamala Harris wins the state of Pennsylvania, then she will have an 88% chance of winning the election. But given certain trends, I do believe that the state of Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia will all be in Donald Trump's column. And if we put those states in his column, he will have a 97% chance of winning the election because these three states will get him to 270 electoral votes. The same thing with Michigan and Wisconsin, but since Michigan is the most left-leaning state on this map, if Donald Trump ends up winning the state of Michigan, he will have an 84% chance of winning the election. And if he wins the state of Wisconsin, those chances go up to 95% chance. If Kamala Harris wins Michigan, she will have an 84% chance of winning the election. But if she also wins the state of the Wisconsin, she will also have an 83% chance of winning the election. So this is a very cool map, and I want to see if I can do this because this is also a big possibility. If Trump wins Pennsylvania and Harris wins Michigan, then this will be a fairly even race. We have 53% chance for Trump, 47% chance for Harris. And this is something that could definitely play out. And I do think it's a possibility for the state of Pennsylvania to stay red, but Michigan to go blue. And then if we have Wisconsin going to her column, then it definitely would push the race into her column. But if Donald Trump wins Wisconsin, then he would definitely have a much higher chance of winning elections. So this is a very cool map that we can definitely use to fill out our averages. And on our map right now, we can definitely fill this out for all our safe states for each candidate. And we do have New Jersey being likely because the margins are not looking as good there for Democrats as they used to. And I do expect the state of New York to be a lot closer than usual. However, I still do not think it will be in that a likely column just because of how much of a Democratic state it is. And I do think Nebraska second is fairly popular for Democrats. I think they'll do fairly well. The state of Illinois and Hawaii are going to stay with Democrats in that safe column. Iowa and Ohio are going to be safe for Donald Trump. And I do expect him to end up being safe, given that already they are looking very safe for him in the polls that we do have. And then all the states we have left are going to be more competitive. I think the state of Colorado is very good for Kamala Harris, and the state of New Mexico is also looking good for her, but they'll be on polar opposites of that likely column. Colorado, being very left trending, is going to be on the higher end of the likely column, closer to 12. New Mexico is going to be on that lower end, closer to 6. And then on Donald Trump's side, Texas and Florida are going to be in his column. And as we explored on this map, if he wins Iowa and Ohio, then these two states do go likely for him. He will win this state by a lot more than what he won by in 2020. He'll win it by over 6 points in my projection. And I do think that Kamala Harris is still favored in the state of Minnesota, in the state of New Hampshire, and in the state of Maine. On this map, they do have it as likely for Kamala Harris. It appears, though, that this is in the lean column. I'm not sure if they messed up with that shading. And this would be, end up going in that likely column. So this ends up making more sense. But yeah, I think this, even though that Donald Trump will make gains among Rust Belt voters, the state of Minnesota being the most liberal out of all of the four, home of Tim Walz, I think it'll still stay Democrat. Same thing with New Hampshire and Maine. The Northeast in general, pretty favorable area for Democrats, and it always has been for the past over 20 to 30 years. They won't find too much trouble winning these states. And if we do have an election scenario, as we can explore over here on this map, where if Donald Trump wins the state of New Hampshire, he has a 95% chance to win the election. And that's something that, I don't think Democrats have to worry about, but it's also something that's possible. And if he wins the state of New Hampshire, we should expect him to carry over 320 electoral votes, because that ends up flipping the state of Minnesota. It ends up having New Mexico and the state of Virginia in that toss-up column. So that's very worrisome for them. Same thing with Maine. If Maine flips to Republicans, then Democrats are very much in trouble, because once again, we would have this map where Donald Trump would have a very, very good chance of winning. We have around 80% chance. I think it's higher, but these numbers are still loading. But anyways, I do still think Democrats are favored. And I do think Democrats are also favored in the state of Virginia by a lean column as well. Now, Virginia is one of those states where the early numbers are looking really good for Republicans. I obviously still have my doubts that Republicans can even win them, but I do think it'll be closer. Once again, using this really good tool that we do have, if Trump wins the state of Virginia, he has a 96% chance of winning the election. And in him winning Virginia, it is most likely that he will flip Minnesota, and once again, New Mexico and the state of New Hampshire would go into his column. If she wins Virginia, we obviously don't really have much change from what we already have on this map, because she is supposed to win the state of Virginia. And now we're left with our 7 toss-up states. I do think right now that the state of North Carolina, I do think Arizona both fall in that lean column. I do think Trump's going to win them by around 2 points or more. Even in the polls are looking really good for him. In the state of Arizona, Trump's up by a 1.7 percentage points. All the polls he's led in except for 2, and these both are Bloomberg and Cook Political Report. So he is very popular in the state of Arizona. I do think he is going to win Arizona. Even in the polls, he's cracking almost 50%. Same thing with North Carolina. He's at 49.1%. He has led most of the polls. Once again, he's only been down in 2 polls out of all of them released. And I do think he's going to win the state by over 2 points. And once again, putting the state of North Carolina in his column would give him a 73% chance of winning the election. And then securing Arizona on top would give him an 85% chance of winning the election, which is very interesting. And what I do believe is going to happen on this map, I do think he will win these 2 states. And I do think he also will win the state of Georgia. But I think he'll win the Georgia in a toss-up column. And the polls in Georgia are much more accurate than a lot of these other states. They predicted both 2016 and 2020 very accurately. And right now they have Trump up by a 1.5%, which lines up almost exactly what I believe the state's going to go. Harris, once again, only leading in 1 poll. Very, very worrisome signs for her in the Sun Belt. And once again, putting the state of Georgia in Trump's column would give him a 71% chance to win the presidential election. And now we're left with these remaining states. And first of all, in the state of Nevada, Nevada for me has become more favorable for Kamala Harris over the past week or so. And that's because she has been leading in most of these polls. And this is actually a flip I have towards her. And right now I do think she is favored in the state of Nevada by a slight tilt margin. The Republicans have been doing well in voter registration, but I want to see more data and more polls that will point to them winning. Obviously, they do lead in a couple polls here, but Kamala Harris does lead in the vast majority of them. And it does seem that, this is one state that she looks the best in. All these other states, her margins are pretty much collapsing. But in Nevada, her margins seem to have been holding steady. And giving her the state of Nevada would actually give her an 84% chance of winning the election. But we'd have to place Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina in Trump's column. So I'm going to place Arizona in his column. And I'm going to see where that ends up getting us. This map is a little weird, so I'm going to do that once again. Place Arizona in his column. It would still give her a 37% chance of winning. So we would have to put the state of Georgia also in his column, which would give him a 56% chance of winning. And then North Carolina would end up falling in his column as well. And if we can get in his column over here, it would end up giving him a obviously much larger percent chance of winning. But I don't think it lets us put too many states in. It definitely confuses the system. But he would have the majority chance of winning the election. And that's where Kamala Harris does end up rebounding a little bit from that lead she does have in Nevada. But that's where it goes downhill from there. I do think Pennsylvania right now does tilt in Trump's column. And given these polls where it is a tie, it is a dead heat of Trump leading around 4, we have Kamala Harris leading 3, and then we have the other 5 being a complete toss-up. And this right here is really good news for Donald Trump, given how badly the polling is in the Rust Belt. I mean, in 2020, look at this, 6.4% for Biden, 3.2% for Clinton. And they're still carrying out a lot of these errors because the crosstabs are oversampling a lot of these college-educated voters. They are undersampling Republicans. And just given those numbers alone, I do think that Donald Trump will win. And those registration numbers, Democrats are down in requests. And a lot of those early voting numbers, which I will actually look at in more detail in another video, are looking very good for Trump. And giving him the state of Pennsylvania, it is almost over. He would have an 80% chance of winning. She would have a 19% chance of winning. So that's why Pennsylvania is the most important state. And, you know, as falling Pennsylvania, I do think the other 2 states will also fall in Trump's column. Harris's lead in both Michigan and Wisconsin have fallen significantly, where she was up by 1 to 2 points at times. Now, the past 3 out of the 4 polls that have come out have actually had Donald Trump up in the state of Michigan. Very surprising. And we actually found out details in the state of Michigan that Slotkin, she's running for the Senate. She actually ended up telling the news that Donald Trump does have a lead in the state. She ended up telling Axios more specifically that Kamala Harris is underwater in the state of Michigan. And if Michigan goes, so does Wisconsin. And Wisconsin's a state that is horribly overestimating Democrats in polls. Check out these numbers back in 2020 and back in 2016, where we have Biden +6 and Clinton +4.7. This is not a good margin for Harris at all. And given a lot of these polls that have come out recently also have the race at pretty much a toss-up, this is not looking good for her at all, especially in these Rust Belt states. And given if Michigan, the most liberal one, were to fall in his column, then the election is pretty much over. If I fill out Michigan for Trump, every other swing state is guaranteed almost to flip to Donald Trump, and he would have an 84% chance of winning the election. But that's going to be all for this video, and that's going to be all for my updated map, and we use a lot of polling to do this, as well as these chances in 538's cool new metric. But thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe, like my video, share all my content with all your friends, and I'll check you guys out in the next one.